The Montana plains stretched wide under an August sky, gold grass bending in a wind that carried nothing but distance. On a ridge above the flatlands, a lone wagon crawled toward a ranch that sat like a fortress against the mountains. 2 barns, a creek line black with cottonwoods, a place built by honest hands and running now on something else. Inside the main house, a hallway, a separate door, a room stacked with ledger books that did not add up. A widow with $14 in a borrowed suitcase set down her gloves. Down the corridor, a silver watch chain caught the sun, boot heels on polished wood, a smile that had been rehearsed for years. The 2 of them met at the office door, and neither one blinked. Winifred Harper did not cry at her husband's funeral. She stood beside the grave, straight, hands folded. The pastor spoke and she heard almost none of it, because 3 rows back stood the banker, Mr. Elmore Prescott, the man who had driven Thomas Harper into the ground with compound interest and paperwork nobody in the county could read without spectacles. And there he was, head bowed, like he was grieving too. Winifred watched him from across the cemetery. She made herself a promise then, quiet, small. Nobody heard it. She did not need them to. Thomas had been a good man, gentle, honest in a way the Montana Territory did not reward. He had borrowed money to expand their cattle the same summer the drought came down hard on the flatlands, and when the bank called the loan early, 6 months before the contract permitted. There was nothing Winifred could do but watch. She had gone to the county clerk. She had written letters. She had sat in a lawyer's office in Billings for 3 hours, while a man 12 years younger than her explained very slowly as though she might not understand that the terms of the loan were complicated and that she might want to let her husband handle it. Thomas was already in the ground by then. She had not told the lawyer that. She had thanked him for his time, walked out into the August heat, never went back. The farm sold for 1/3 of what it was worth. She kept the ledger books, every account Thomas had ever kept, every debt, every payment, every entry in his careful handwriting. She kept them because numbers did not lie. People lied. Numbers, when you read them, honestly told you exactly what had happened and exactly who had done it. Winifred was 29 years old, which was not old. She knew that. But the territory had a way of wearing a person into something older than their years. There had been a boy, once, named after Thomas's father. He had lived 9 days. He was buried in a smaller plot beside his father now, and Winifred did not go there often because there were some places a woman could not survive visiting twice in a season. She had taken bookkeeping work in Billings for 2 years. Then the office closed. Then she kept the books for 3 different merchants. One paid her fairly, one shorted her twice and blamed her arithmetic. One simply stopped answering the door. By the time she saw the notice pinned outside the general store on the last Thursday of July, she had $14 to her name and a suitcase that had belonged to her mother. Red Willow Ranch. Seeking experience accountant. Wages negotiable. Room and board included. She read it once. She read it twice. Then she went inside and asked the storekeeper for a pencil and a slip of paper, and she wrote her acceptance in the neatest hand she had, and she paid 3 cents to have it delivered. I'll take it, she thought. 2 weeks later, she was on a wagon rolling out of Billings with everything she owned in a suitcase her mother had carried across the plains in 1855. The driver was a lean man named Holt, sun-creased, quiet. He said maybe 11 words the entire morning, and Winifred was grateful for every one of them, because right then she did not have the strength for company. She watched the country change. Flat opened into rolling. Rolling opened into grass, good grass, the kind that meant water somewhere below. Thomas would have noticed that. Thomas always noticed the grass. Winifred noticed the fences, because a fence told you what a ranch was. Well kept meant somebody cared, or somebody was afraid to let things fall apart. Those were two different kinds of place. She had worked both. The wagon crested a hill, and there it was, Red Willow Ranch, bigger than she had pictured. Solid main house, a row of outbuildings, 2 barns, a creek line marked by cottonwoods at the far edge of the property, and beyond that, the beginning of pine country, and beyond that, blue mountains that had probably been there since the world began. Something inside her chest went still. Not calm exactly. Something older than calm. Something like the feeling of stepping into a room you had never seen before and understanding that you had been walking toward it your whole life without knowing. She pushed that away. She was here to keep books, that was all. Holt pulled the wagon up to the kitchen door instead of the front porch, which was interesting. And before Winifred could ask why the kitchen door opened and a woman stepped out into the yard with a bowl in her hands. She was small, silver-haired, old enough that her age showed in her wrists and hands and the way she stood. Old enough to have earned every gray hair on her head, twice over. 62 Winifred would learn later. Her name was Holly Blackwood. And she looked at Winifred with the clear, steady gaze of a woman who had spent decades watching people come and go and had long ago stopped bothering to be polite about her assessments. "You're the new one," Holly said. Winifred Harper. Holly nodded once. She held out the bowl. "Sit," she said. "Eat. I have not even set my bag down. Bag will keep. Soup won't." Winifred hesitated. The bowl was heavy in Holly's hands, and Holly was not lowering it. Winifred took it. It was warm through the pottery, and the smell of it, chicken and root vegetables, and something Winifred could not name, hit her in a way she had not expected. She realized, standing in the yard with a bowl of soup and a stranger watching her, that she had not eaten since dawn the day before. "Sit," Holly said again. Kinder this time. "There." She pointed to a bench beside the kitchen wall. Winifred sat. She ate. She ate the way a person ate who had spent months pretending she did not need very much. Slowly at first, then not slowly. Holly stood beside the door and did not watch. She looked at the mountains instead, and she let Winifred eat. When Winifred was done, Holly took the bowl from her hands. She turned it in her palms once, then looked at Winifred with a look that was not soft, but was not hard either. Around here, Holly said, women got to eat proper before they can think proper. I do not usually. I know you do not. How? Holly almost smiled. You walked in, wearing a widow's shoes and a dress that has been let out at the seams twice, she said. I have been feeding women who forgot to feed themselves for 40 years. I know one when I see one. Winifred did not know what to say to that. She said thank you. Holly nodded. Then, Charles is in the office. He has been waiting since noon. I am on time. He does not like waiting. I imagine he does not. Something moved across Holly's face. Not quite a smile. Something related to one. Come find me tonight, Holly said. In the kitchen. After supper. I want to talk to you about something. About what? Later. She turned and went back inside. Winifred stood in the yard with her suitcase at her feet and the taste of soup still on her tongue and something in her chest that felt for the first time in a long time less than entirely alone. She picked up the suitcase. She walked toward the main house. She met Charles Ashcroft at the front porch. He came off the steps fast, the way men came off steps when they had been waiting and wanted you to know it. He was tall, not enormous, but wide through the chest, dressed well for a working ranch. A silver watch chain caught the sun when he moved. He had a handsome face, the kind of handsome that studied itself in a mirror every morning and had learned exactly what worked. Miss Harper. He extended his hand and his smile at the same time. Charles Ashcroft, ranch manager. We spoke by letter. We did. Winifred shook his hand, businesslike. Once. She did not linger. Something moved in his expression. Just a flicker. Gone almost immediately. He was not used to women who did not linger. "Let me show you the office," he said. "The previous accountant left things in some disorder, I am afraid. You will have your work cut out for you. That is what you're paying me for." He laughed. It was a good laugh. Practiced. Warm on the surface. Winifred felt the hair on the back of her neck lift very slightly, and she thought not for any reason she could have named yet. Not this one. Careful. Then she followed him into the main house. The office was off the parlor, separate door. It smelled of old paper, dust, and something sour Winifred could not name. The desk was stacked. Papers everywhere. 3 different ledger books open to 3 different pages, none of which appeared to connect to each other. 2 supply invoices had been used as a coaster. There was a half-empty coffee cup on the edge of the desk that had grown a skin. Winifred stood in the doorway and looked at it. "How long," she said, "since the last accountant left?" 8 months, Charles said. 8 months. She looked at the stacks again. "I will need a week to establish what I'm looking at." "Of course. Take whatever time you need. I only ask that any questions about ranch operations come through me first. Some of our workers are well. They're ranch hands, Miss Harper, not business people. I would not want anyone to give you incorrect information and muddy the waters." She turned. He was smiling again, that same wide smile. "I will come to you with any questions," she said. She did not say she would only come to him. He took that as agreement. He clapped his hands together once. Cheerful. "Welcome to Red Willow, Miss Harper. I am confident you and I will get along excellently." Then he left her to it. Winifred set her suitcase down. She stood in the middle of the room. She turned slowly. Then she took off her gloves. She rolled up her sleeves. She got to work. She missed supper. Holt brought her a plate at dusk, knocked twice on the doorframe, set it down on the corner of the desk, left without a word. Winifred ate standing up. Bread, cold ham, a slice of apple pie that made her almost cry because Thomas had loved apple pie, and she had not thought about that in weeks. She kept working. By 10 o'clock, she had identified 4 separate accounting systems that had no relationship to one another. 2 sets of payroll records that did not match, and a running tally of supply expenditures that would have outfitted 3 ranches this size. She closed the last ledger, folded her hands on top of it, sat quietly. She had seen bad bookkeeping before. Lazy bookkeeping. Careless bookkeeping. This was not any of those things. Someone had built this. Someone had built this carefully. She picked up her pen, started making notes. Then she remembered. Holly. Kitchen after supper. She stood up too fast and had to steady herself against the desk, because she had eaten and worked and eaten and worked and now the day was catching her all at once. She walked to the kitchen. Holly was there, in an apron, kneading bread dough for the morning. She looked up when Winifred came in and did not say anything for a moment, just looked. "Sit," Holly said. Winifred sat at the long wooden table. Holly kept kneading, her hands moved without her eyes. 40 years of bread. "I have been at this ranch 19 years, Holly said. "That is a long time." 19 years. "I came in the summer of 1865, when it was still mostly cattle and hope. Mr. Carter Sr. hired me. He said a ranch needs a woman in the kitchen, and I said a woman needs a place, and we settled on wages. He was a fair man. He passed, yes, 8 years back. Left the ranch to his eldest." Winifred waited. Holly flipped the dough, punched it down, started again. "I have kept a log," Holly said. "A log. Every day. 19 years. Every man who worked this land, what he did, what he was paid, what supplies came in, what went out, all of it, in my own hand. Why?" Holly stopped kneading. She wiped her hands on the apron, looked at Winifred directly. "Because somebody had to," she said, "and nobody was going to listen to a bread woman, so I figured I would keep the log. And one day, if somebody with the right eyes came to this ranch, I would have something to give them." Winifred sat very still. "The right eyes." Holly's mouth moved, almost a smile. "Not quite. You have them," she said. "I saw it when you got off the wagon. You look at things twice. Most people do not." Winifred did not know what to say. She said, "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Charles has been running this place 4 years and something is wrong. I do not have the numbers to prove it, but I have kept the days and you." She looked at Winifred steady. "You are here to read the numbers." Winifred's hands were shaking very slightly. She put them under the table. "I will need to see the log," she said. "Whenever you are ready. Tomorrow. Tomorrow." They looked at each other for a long moment across the flour-dusted table. Then Holly said quieter, "There was a woman before you. Miss Vance. Cordelia Vance. She was a kind woman. She lasted 6 months. What happened to her? Charles said she moved to Oregon. You do not believe that? I have never believed it." Winifred sat with that. Her hands under the table were fists now, and she made them uncurl one finger at a time. "Have you told anyone? Who would I tell?" Holly went back to the bread, punched it, folded it, set it in a bowl to rise, covered it with a cloth, wiped her hands. "Go to bed," she said. "You look like a woman who has not slept in a year." "I have not." "Well, start tonight." Winifred stood up. She stopped at the doorway, turned back. "Holly, yes, thank you." Holly waved her off, but not unkindly. "Sleep," she said. Winifred slept. She was back at the desk by 6 the next morning. She did not go looking for the cowboy. He found her. She was walking the fence line at the north end of the property. Because you understood numbers better when you understood what the numbers were supposed to represent. And she came around a stand of cottonwoods and almost walked directly into a man crouching over a snapped fence post. He looked up. He did not startle. He was around 40, sun-darkened, lean, the kind of hands that came from years of actual work, not years of directing other people to do it. He wore a plain canvas shirt, boots that had been resoled at least twice. His hat was pushed back on his head like he had forgotten it was there. He had watchful eyes. not unfriendly, not threatening, simply the eyes of a man who had spent a long time in open country and knew how to be still. "Morning," he said. "Morning." Winifred stepped around him to get a better look at the break. The post had gone soft from the inside, rot working up from the ground, invisible until it snapped. "You will need to dig that out about 2 feet deeper than it looks." He glanced at the post, then back at her. "I was figuring 3, he said. 3 is better. There is still moisture from the spring runoff. It will come back for you if you do not get below it." He looked at her for a moment without speaking. Not the way Charles looked at her. This was different. Something more like genuine curiosity. "You are the new accountant," he said. "Winifred Harper." "Wesley," he said. He did not offer more than that. She did not push. "How many posts on this line are you replacing?" she said. 4 I have found. Probably 2 more I have not gotten to yet." Winifred nodded. She was thinking about the supply ledger, the one that showed timber expenditures so far beyond what a working ranch of this size should require that she had flagged it twice already. "Is all the fencing on the property maintained by the ranch?" she said. "Or does it run along shared boundary lines with neighboring properties?" Wesley set his hammer down. He looked at her with that same measured attention. "Most of it is ours," he said. "There is a shared line with the Alderman property on the eastern edge, about a 1/4 mile. Is there a written agreement for maintenance on that section?" "There was 3 years back. Is it current?" He was quiet for a moment. "I do not believe it has been renewed." Winifred wrote something in the small notebook she carried. "I will need to find it," she said, "or find why it is not there." Wesley watched her write. "Charles handles the agreements," he said carefully. "Yes, he does." She put the notebook away and walked on. She felt his eyes on her back for a moment before she heard him pick up the hammer again. She came back past the same fence line 2 hours later on her way to breakfast. He had dug the rotted post out clean and was setting the new one, packing the dirt in layers the way you did when you wanted it to last. He did not look up this time, but when she passed, he said without pausing his work, "The agreement you are looking for. If you cannot find it in the office files, try the 3rd drawer on the left side of the storage cabinet in the equipment shed. There is a box of older documents nobody has touched in a while." Winifred stopped walking, turned. "Why would it be there?" she said. "Because that is where older documents go," he said. "When someone does not want them found easily, but does not want to be accused of destroying them either." He pressed a finer layer of dirt down around the post. She looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. She walked on, and she felt for the second time in 24 hours less than entirely alone, which was not something she had planned for, which was in fact the last thing she had planned for. She found the agreement in exactly the place he described. She also found 11 other documents she had not been looking for. 3 of them were deed transfers. Winifred sat down on the floor of the equipment shed with the papers in her lap and read each one twice, then a 3rd time, because they did not make sense, because they made too much sense, because the ranch had sold 63 acres of land in 3 separate transactions to a company called Meridian Land and Cattle. And Winifred had never heard of Meridian Land and Cattle in her life. The signatures were forged. She was not certain yet, but she was almost certain. She put everything back where she had found it. She closed the drawer. She stood in the equipment shed for a full minute, because her legs did not feel entirely reliable. Then she went back to the office. and started mapping what she knew. She worked through the next 4 days, nights mostly, because in the daylight she did the routine reconciliation work Charles expected her to be doing. And after supper, when the main house was quiet, she pulled the real books out from where she had begun hiding them. She cross-referenced supply expenditures against actual supply deliveries. She checked those against the informal logs the ranch hands kept, because ranch hands always kept their own tallies, whether management knew it or not, because their livelihood depended on having their own record. The pattern was elegant. That was the thing about sophisticated theft. Whoever had built this had been careful, patient. No single transaction was large enough to draw immediate attention. The fake invoices were written for services that might plausibly have occurred. The payroll discrepancies were small enough that any individual worker might have doubted his own memory before he doubted the record. But compounded over 4 years, the numbers told a devastating story. Winifred sat with a fresh sheet of paper on the third night and wrote a figure at the top. She looked at it. She underlined it. She sat very still. Charles Ashcroft had taken a significant amount of money from Red Willow Ranch. She had an exact figure now. She was not ready to write it anywhere but her own notebook. On the 4th day, she met the brother, 2 men. She had seen them from a distance her first morning and had catalogued them the way she catalogued everyone. Now they were in the yard when she crossed from the office to the equipment shed, and one of them tipped his hat. "You must be Miss Harper, Ambrose Carter, ma'am, and this is my brother Thaddeus." Ambrose was in his mid-30s, wide-shouldered, serious face, the kind of man who did not smile easily but meant it when he did. Thaddeus was younger, softer around the eyes. He had a bundle of something in his arms. Winifred squinted at it, realized it was a lamb. "Sick," Thaddeus said, catching her look. "She has been off her feed. I was going to try a poultice." "You know poultices?" Winifred said. "Our mother taught us." Something in the way he said it, gentle, reverent. Winifred paused. She looked at him more carefully. Thaddeus had the calm eyes of someone who spoke to animals more easily than to men. "If you have a moment," he said, "I could use another set of hands. I have no experience with lambs. You have hands." Winifred looked at him. She followed him into the small barn beside the equipment shed. He worked with the lamb for 40 minutes, held her, cleaned a wound Winifred had not even seen, talked to her the whole time in a voice so low Winifred could barely hear the words. Winifred watched. She thought about Thomas. She thought about hands. She thought about how many kinds of tenderness there were in the world, and how few of them she had seen in the last 4 years. When they were done, Thaddeus wiped his hands on a cloth, nodded at her. "Thank you. I did nothing." "You watched," he said. "Sometimes that is the thing." He carried the lamb back to her mother. Winifred stood in the barn a moment longer, alone. She walked back to the office. She sat down, and she noticed she was breathing differently than she had been when she arrived at Red Willow 6 days ago, which was not something she was ready to think about, which she pushed aside. She kept working. She met Beatrice on the 5th day. The child was 5 years old maybe, small for her age, sitting cross-legged in the dirt beside the chicken coop, holding a rag doll with mismatched button eyes. She looked up when Winifred came around the corner. She did not smile. She did not look afraid either. She looked steady, the way certain children looked, older than their years. "Hello," Winifred said. "Hello. Are you a chicken watcher?" "I do not know what that is." "It is somebody who watches chickens." Then yes, sometimes. The girl considered this. I have been watching them. For how long? Since breakfast. Winifred crouched down, slowly, because grown women loomed over small children, and it was not a thing children forgave easily. What is her name? She said, pointing to the doll. Fern. That is a lovely name. My papa made her. Winifred's chest did a thing it had not done in 6 years. Where is your papa? The girl looked at the chickens. He went away. For how long? I do not know. Miss Holly said he was a good man and got in trouble he did not do. She said he will come back if he can. Winifred sat down, fully, in the dirt, beside the girl. She did not think about her dress. What is your name? She said. Beatrice. That is a beautiful name. My mama picked it. Where is she? Beatrice picked at the corner of Fern's cotton dress. Winter, she said. Winifred understood. She did not press. Do you live in the bunkhouse? She said. I live with Miss Holly now. In the little room off the kitchen. I help her. Do you? I stir. She lets me stir the pots. That is important work. I know. Winifred smiled. It surprised her. She had not smiled properly in months. Beatrice looked at her sideways. You have kind eyes, Beatrice said. Do I? My mama had kind eyes. Winifred could not speak for a moment. She reached over, carefully, and straightened one of Fern's little button eyes that was crooked. There, she said. Beatrice looked at the doll, then at Winifred. Are you staying? She said. I do not know yet. I hope so. Then she turned back to the chickens. Winifred sat in the dirt for another minute, long enough that the sun moved across her shoulders. She did not know why she was sitting. She only knew that if she stood up, she would have to stop looking at Beatrice. And if she stopped looking at Beatrice, she would have to think about what she had just felt, which was too big to think about yet, which she was not ready for. She stood up eventually. She said goodbye. Beatrice waved without looking. Winifred walked back to the office. She did not do any work for the next hour. She sat at the desk. She looked at the wall. She thought about a boy who had lived 9 days. She thought about a girl who had lost a mother in winter and a father to whatever Charles Ashcroft had done to him. She thought about her promise at the grave. She thought. Then she picked up her pen. She went back to work. On the 6th day, Charles came into her office at 10 in the morning. He was in an excellent mood. Miss Harper. He set his hat on the corner of her desk. Progress, steady, good, excellent. Because I wanted to give you some context. We are about to enter an important period for Red Willow. There is a company, Meridian Pacific Railroad. They have expressed interest in a right-of-way through our southern parcels. Very significant opportunity. Winifred did not look up from her page. She kept her hand moving. When would this be finalized? 21 days. They are sending a representative to close the arrangement. 21 days. Yes. I will make sure the accounts are in order for the review. Excellent. Excellent. He picked up his hat, then paused at the door. You know, Miss Harper, I have been managing this ranch 4 years. Every arrangement I have made has been in the best interest of Red Willow. I am confident you will find the accounting supports that. She looked up. She met his eyes. She smiled. Warm. Perfectly calibrated. I am sure I will, she said. He left. She sat very still for 30 seconds. Then she wrote in her notebook, 21 days. She underlined it twice. She went to the equipment shed that evening. It was near dusk. The ranch was quiet. most of the men finishing supper in the bunkhouse. Winifred walked with a specific errand in her hand. She had left a pen there, she would say if anyone asked. She had already left the pen there deliberately that morning, because she had learned early in her widowhood that a woman who was going to do something questionable had better have a reason ready. She opened the third drawer. She took out the box of older documents. She sat down on the floor. She went through them one more time, because she wanted to be certain. The 3 deed transfers, yes. The forged signatures, yes. The fence agreement she had already retrieved, yes. But under the fence agreement, slid down between 2 other papers, not filed, just tucked, almost carelessly, was a letter, handwritten, half finished. The handwriting was Charles Ashcroft's. She recognized it from the ranch correspondence. Winifred pulled the letter out. Her hands did not shake exactly, but they were not entirely steady. She read it. She read it twice. Father, it began. Father, the timing on the meridian arrangement is holding. 21 days. Everything is in order. I have the paperwork prepared, and there will be no obstacles. Miss Vance was handled with discretion. There will be no further complications from that quarter. The new bookkeeper is a widow from Billings, educated but not connected. I have observed her closely her first week. She is careful with her figures. She may become curious. She may in time understand more than is convenient. If she does, I will manage her as I have managed the others. Please do not be concerned. The letter stopped there, unsigned. Winifred sat on the floor of the equipment shed with the letter in her lap. Father. Charles had a father who knew. Miss Vance was handled with discretion. There will be no further complications from that quarter. Winifred read that sentence a 3rd time. The word handled sat in her chest like a small cold stone. She thought about Holly in the kitchen. 19 years. And the way Holly had said, I have never believed it. She thought about Cordelia Vance. She thought about the smile Charles had given her at 10 this morning. The clap of his hands. Miss Harper. Progress. She thought about Beatrice's chicken coop and Wesley's fence post and Thaddeus's lamb. She thought about her promise beside the grave. She thought. Then she folded the letter carefully, along its original creases, so it would sit exactly the way it had been sitting. She placed it back between the 2 papers where she had found it. She closed the drawer. She stood up. Her legs were not entirely reliable, but they held her. She walked out of the equipment shed into the last light of a Montana evening. The cottonwoods along the creek stood black against the western sky. The air smelled of sage and river water. Somewhere in the bunkhouse, a man was singing quietly and off-key. Wesley was standing beside the shed door. He had not been there when she went in. He had a cup of coffee in each hand. I brought 2, he said. Winifred looked at him. She did not say anything for a long moment. Then she took the cup. You were waiting, she said. I was. Why? Because you have not eaten supper in 3 nights, he said. And Holly is worried. He paused. I am too. Winifred looked down at the coffee. It was warm through her fingers. She looked up at him. Wesley, she said. Yes. I need to tell you something. Not tonight, but soon. He nodded. He did not press, which was, she realized, exactly what she had needed him to do. When you are ready, he said. They stood there as the last light. 2 people. 2 cups of coffee. and between them, a widening of something Winifred was not yet prepared to name. She turned her face slightly, so he would not see it. She took a slow breath. She sipped the coffee. 21 days, she thought. To take apart a 4-year lie built by a man whose father knew. Whose father was somewhere out there, waiting for a letter, reading the reports of his son's discretion. 21 days. And she was not alone. She was not alone. She had a breadwoman with a 19-year log. She had a cowboy with a hammer and a set of directions to the 3rd drawer. She had a small girl with a doll named Fern who had said, "I hope so." She had $14. Still, in the leather pouch inside her mother's suitcase, because she had not needed to spend a cent of it since she arrived. She had a promise, which had never left her, which was she was beginning to understand the whole reason she was here. Wesley shifted beside her. "Miss Harper," he said. "Winifred." His breath caught, just slightly, the way a man's breath caught when a woman gave him her first name for the first time. "Winifred," he said. "Yes, whatever it is, when you are ready. I am here." She looked at him, fully this time. She let him see her. "I know," she said. Then she turned and walked back toward the main house, with the coffee warm in her hand, and the sky going purple over the mountains, and the letter she had just read still burning behind her eyes. 21 days. She would need every one of them. She walked into the kitchen. Holly was there, sleeves rolled up. She looked at Winifred once, sharply, and something in Winifred's face must have shown because Holly set down her spoon. "Sit," Holly said. Winifred sat. "I found something," Winifred said. "Tell me." She did. And Holly listened. All the way through, her hands folded in her lap, not once interrupting. When Winifred was done, Holly was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very softly, "His father. His father." Holly closed her eyes. "That means," she said, "it goes higher than we thought." "Yes." "Then we will need to be very careful." "Yes." Holly opened her eyes. "You are not alone in this, Winifred," she said. "I know." "Say it again." Winifred looked at her. "I am not alone in this," she said. Holly nodded, reached across the table, took Winifred's hand, held it. The bread was rising in the corner. The lamp burned steady on the wall. Somewhere down the hall, a small girl named Beatrice was asleep in a bed off the kitchen, holding a doll her papa had made. And out beyond the yard in the dark, a man named Wesley was walking back to the bunkhouse, carrying an empty coffee cup and thinking about what he was going to do about a woman he had not planned on. 21 days. Winifred sat in a warm kitchen. She held an old woman's hand. She let herself, for the first time in a very long time, be exactly where she was. Then she went upstairs. She lit the lamp. She opened her notebook. She wrote at the top of a fresh page 2 words: 21. She underlined them. Then she picked up her pen and she began. The next morning, Charles came to her office at 9. He knocked. He had never knocked before. "Miss Harper, may I?" "Please." He sat in the chair across from her desk, not standing at the door the way he usually did, sitting, which was different, which meant something. Winifred kept her pen moving. "I wanted to check in," Charles said, "about your progress. It has been a week, 8 days, 8 days, of course." He smiled. "Time flies, does it?" He laughed lightly, which was itself a kind of tell, because a man in charge did not laugh lightly at a woman's dry answer, unless he was studying her, which he was. Winifred set her pen down. "I am on schedule with the second quarter reconciliation," she said. "I should have a preliminary report for you by the end of next week." "Excellent. Now, there is one thing." He crossed his legs. "I have heard you have been asking questions around the property." "I ask questions." "Of course." "Yes, of course." He nodded. "But some of the men, well, they mentioned you had inquired about fence maintenance agreements, property boundaries, that sort of thing. That is part of the reconciliation." "Yes. Yes." He smiled again. "But you understand, if there are gaps in the paperwork, that is because of the previous accountant. Miss Vance was," he paused, "less organized than we had hoped." Winifred did not blink. "I did not realize you had mentioned her name to me before," she said. Something moved across his face, very small, gone in an instant. "Perhaps I did not," he said pleasantly. "In any case, if you have questions about anything that appears to be missing, please come to me first, before consulting the men. Some of them mean well, but they can misremember. I would hate for you to spend hours chasing a discrepancy that turns out to be simple faulty memory. I appreciate that." "Wonderful." He stood, picked up his hat, smiled. "You are doing splendid work, Miss Harper." Then he left. Winifred sat perfectly still for a full minute. Then she stood up, walked to the door, closed it, leaned her forehead against the wood. Because he had said Miss Vance, because he had not meant to, because his brain had let that slip out before his mask could catch it, which meant he was watching her, which meant he was starting to think she might be a problem, which meant she had less time than she thought. She straightened. She went back to the desk. She kept working. That night, Winifred slipped down the hall to Holly's kitchen after 10. The lamp was already lit. Holly was at the table, a cup of tea in front of her, not drinking it, just sitting. Beatrice was asleep in the little room off the pantry. The door cracked open the way Holly kept it. "Come in," Holly said. Winifred sat. "He asked me about you today." "In a way," Winifred said. "I mean, he did not ask about you. He asked about the men, but he said her name, Cordelia, without meaning to." Holly's hands were very still on her cup. "He is nervous. He is starting to be. Then he is dangerous." Winifred nodded. They sat. The wind moved outside. A shutter tapped softly against the kitchen wall. Somewhere down the pasture, a horse whinnied. "Holly," Winifred said, "quiet. Tell me about her." "Cordelia." Holly looked at her hands. She was 34 years old, widowed young. Came here with references from a merchant in Bozeman. She was clever, very clever. Not with the numbers, I mean, not the way you are. She was clever with people. She read them. That is a different skill. It did not save her. How long was she here? 6 months. Almost 7. She started to see things. The same things you are seeing. She came to my kitchen. She sat where you are sitting. She told me she was worried, that she thought Mr. Ashcroft was. Holly stopped. Her mouth worked. Was what? Was doing things he should not be doing, and that he had begun to notice her noticing. Winifred waited. Holly took a breath. Says. And one night, in early winter, she said, she left. She did not tell me. She did not say goodbye. She did not take her clothes. There was a letter on my table in the morning, in her handwriting. She said she was going to Oregon. Her cousin had offered her a position. Did she have a cousin in Oregon? I do not know. Holly's voice was very steady. But that was her handwriting, Winifred. I know her hand. I saw her write out my grocery lists for 6 months. It was her hand. Then somebody put a pen in her hand and made her write it. Winifred could not speak. She reached across the table. She took Holly's hand, held it. Holly's eyes did not fill, because Holly was 62 and had buried more than she talked about, and was not going to cry in her own kitchen over something she had failed to prove years ago. But she held Winifred's hand very tight. I promise you, Winifred said. I promise you I will find out what happened to her. Do not promise me that. Why? Because I do not want you making promises about a dead woman that could cost you your own life. Promise me instead. She looked at Winifred directly. Promise me. You will finish this, that is all. I promise. Holly nodded once. She let go of Winifred's hand. She stood up, rinsed her cup, set it on the drying rack the way she had rinsed every cup in this kitchen for 19 years. Go to bed, she said. Winifred went. She did not sleep. The next 2 days, Winifred watched Charles the way a woman watches a man she is going to have to outwit. She noted what times he left the main house, which mornings he rode out, which afternoons he took supper alone in his quarters, which nights the lamp in his office window burned past midnight. Monday morning, she confirmed, was still the day he rode out to the Delaney property to the west. He was gone from 7 to 9, every week, without fail. She started building her plan for the following Monday. Meanwhile, on the 11th day, Beatrice ran a fever. Winifred came into the kitchen at dusk and found Holly standing over the little bed of the pantry. Beatrice was flushed, eyes closed. Her breath was quick and shallow. She had a cough. It started an hour ago. It is getting worse. I will ride for the doctor. Winifred was already turning. Holly caught her arm. Wait, she said. Just wait one moment, because Thaddeus Carter was standing at the kitchen door. He had heard the child coughing from the yard. He had a small leather satchel in his hand. Ma'am, he said. To Holly. May I try something first, before we send for the doctor? Holly looked at him. She looked at Winifred. Winifred looked at Thaddeus. She had watched him with the lamb. She had watched his hands. She thought. Yes, she said. Thaddeus knelt beside the bed. He set the satchel down. He did not open it right away. He put his hand on Beatrice's forehead, then on her chest, feeling her breathing. His face was very calm. Coltsfoot, he said, and a mustard plaster. My mother used it when we had the croup as boys. I have made it for 2 of the Hans children already. It works. He opened the satchel. There were dried leaves, a small clay jar of mustard powder, muslin cloths, everything wrapped and labeled in a woman's handwriting. His mother's Winifred realized. Thaddeus worked for the next hour. Winifred sat on the edge of the bed and stroked Beatrice's forehead. Holly watched from the doorway with her arms folded and her face carefully neutral. Around 10, Beatrice opened her eyes. She looked at Winifred. Mama, she said. Winifred froze. Because that word. Because she was 5 years old and sick. And she had said Mama in a small clear voice. And Winifred could not think or breathe or move. Because Winifred's boy had lived 9 days and had never learned any word. Because a child in this bed had called her Mama. Because Because Holly was watching her from the doorway. Thaddeus was watching her from beside the bed. Beatrice's eyes had closed again. She had drifted back into sleep. Her breath was easier now. Winifred did not move. She did not correct her. She did not say, "I am not your mama, sweetheart." She just kept stroking the forehead. She did not look up. She could not, because if she looked up, one of them would see, and she was not ready for anyone to see yet. Thaddeus stood up, quietly, packed his satchel. Holly walked him to the kitchen door. Winifred heard them speaking in low voices. She heard Holly say, "Thank you, son." She heard Thaddeus say, "I will check in tomorrow." Then Holly came back, sat on the bed beside Winifred. She did not say anything. She just sat. After a long time, Winifred spoke. "My boy, the girl, he was Thomas Jr. He was born in October. She stopped. Holly put her hand on Winifred's shoulder. Just left it there. He lived 9 days, Winifred said. Holly squeezed her shoulder. "I know, honey," she said, very softly. "I know." Winifred sat with a sleeping child's hand in hers. She did not cry, not yet. But something had loosened in her chest that had been tied down for 6 years. And she thought, maybe I am not done. Maybe I am not who I thought I was. Maybe there is more. Then she pushed the thought back, because she had 21 days minus 11, which was 10. Because Charles Ashcroft had said Miss Vance out loud in her office. Because there was work to do. She left the kitchen at midnight. She walked to the creek. She had not planned to, but her feet took her there. Across the yard, past the barns, through the gap in the cottonwoods, to the bank, where the water ran low and steady in the August dark. Wesley was there. Of course he was. He was sitting on a fallen log, boots off, his hat on the ground beside him. He had a stem of dry grass in his teeth, and he took it out when he saw her. He did not stand. He did not ask why she was there. He just moved sideways on the log, made room. She sat. They did not speak for a long time. The creek moved. An owl called somewhere in the pines behind them. Then Winifred said, "I found a letter." Wesley waited. Charles was writing to his father about the Meridian arrangement, about Cordelia, about me. Wesley was still. He said, "His father." "Yes." "He is a commissioner," Wesley said. "County Commissioner, Elias Ashcroft." Winifred turned her head slowly. "You knew." "I suspected. I have been trying to prove it for 2 years. His name is on none of the ranch paperwork. He has been careful, but he owns land adjacent to 2 of the parcels Charles has been moving, which is not evidence in itself. It is only pattern." "Wesley." "Yes. I need to tell you something about who I am before I ask you anything else." He did not move. "Tell me." "I was married to a man named Thomas Harper. He was a good man, a rancher, small operation outside Billings. 4 years ago, the bank called our loan early, 6 months before contract. It broke him. He died the following spring. Not sick, not injured. He just stopped. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He stopped." She could not finish. Wesley waited. "He died on a Tuesday afternoon in April," she said. "I found him in the barn. He had not hanged himself. He was just sitting, and when I touched his shoulder, he fell over. He had been dead for 2 hours, Winnie. I lost the farm 2 months later. I have been keeping other people's books for 4 years, because I do not know how to do anything else. Wesley did not speak. He put his hand on the log between them, palm up. He did not touch her. He did not reach. He just put his hand there. Winifred looked at it. She reached over. She put her hand in his. "And I need you to know," she said, "that I am not here to be rescued. I am here because I saw a wrong number in a book, and the only thing I have known how to do since Thomas died is refuse to look away." "I know," Wesley said. "You do. I have known that about you since the fence post." She almost laughed. The sound came out broken. "You did not." "I did. 3 feet. 2 feet. You corrected me." "Nobody has corrected me on my own land in 3 years without also being afraid of me. You just told me the truth about a fence post." She closed her eyes. Then Wesley said, "I have to tell you something too." She opened her eyes. He turned toward her. On the log. "My name is Wesley Alden Carter," he said. "My father built Red Willow Ranch in 1861. He died in 1876. He left it to me. I have been living here for 3 years pretending to be a hired hand because I could not prove what Charles was doing from the owner's chair, and I needed the men to trust me before they would talk. So I put on boots and I picked up a hammer and I waited. Winifred did not move. "You own this ranch, yes. The whole thing, yes." "Wesley." He waited. She looked at him. "For a long time." Then she said, "I should be angrier." "Yes. Why am I not angrier?" He did not answer. She looked at the water. "I should be furious," she said. "I have been walking around with your problem in my ledger for 8 days. I have been the one Charles has been threatening in his letters. And you have been. Where? Fixing fences. I was going to tell you. When? Tonight. Actually, I decided this afternoon, before you found me here. Why tonight? Because Charles said Miss Vance in your office this morning, and I heard it from Holt at lunch, and I realized you did not have the time I thought you had." Winifred sat with that. She was still angry, she was, but she was also, and this was the part she was not ready for, relieved. Because a woman who had been carrying a secret this heavy for 8 days had a right to be angry that the man beside her had also been carrying it. But she had a right to be relieved that he had been carrying it too. Because carrying alone was a different kind of tired than carrying together. She turned her face toward the water, because she could not look at him yet. "Wesley," she said. "Yeah. The men who worked here, the 14 who were shorted. Do you know their names? I know all of them. Have you spoken to them?" "Not yet. Not as the owner. I have worked beside them for 3 years as Wesley the Hand. I know their wives' names. I know their children's names. I know which of them are saving to buy their own quarter section. I know which of them are drinking too much. I know one of them has a mother in Missouri he sends money to every month, and that he has been sending less for 2 years because Charles kept telling him the ranch had a bad quarter." She turned back to him. "Then that is what you tell them. When it is done, all of it. I will, every dollar. Every dollar." She looked at him. "There is one more thing you need to know," Wesley said. She waited. "Charles is not the only Ashcroft I have watched. His father, Elias, he had a wife, Anna. She died 8 years ago. Sudden. Fever, everyone said. But she left behind letters, journals. I have heard about them from a woman who used to clean their house. She said Anna wrote in her journal every night, and that she had begun in the months before her death to write about Charles. about things she had seen him do as a young man, things she had confronted him about, things her husband had refused to hear. Winifred was very still. Where are those journals now? In her husband's study, in a chest. He has not opened it in 8 years. You know this. I paid a woman $2 a month for 2 years to keep dusting that chest and telling me if it moved. Winifred stared at him. Then she laughed. A short, choked, disbelieving laugh. You are not a ranch hand, she said. No, you are absolutely not a ranch hand. Wesley smiled, very slightly. I am a ranch owner, he said, who learned to be patient because impatient men lose everything. She looked at him, really looked, at his sun-darkened face and his careful eyes and his hands that had built calluses on land he owned. At 40 years old, widowed also. Yes, she had figured that out 3 days ago. He had said something about his mother teaching him Thaddeus poultices, but nothing about a wife. And a man, Wesley's age with no wife, had either never had one or had lost one, and Wesley did not have the eyes of a man who had never known love. He had the eyes of a man who had known it and put it down and kept walking. The same eyes she had, Wesley, she said. Yes, I am not asking you tonight, but I want you to know, I am going to ask you eventually. Ask me what? Everything. He held her hand tighter. I will tell you, he said, when you ask, all of it. She nodded. They sat by the creek until the moon came up. They did not speak much more. There was nothing more that needed to be said just then. Some things settled between people, not through words, but through the specific pressure of one hand held in another for an hour at night, beside water with a plan forming quietly in both their heads. The next day, Winifred began writing the final summary. She wrote it in a notebook she kept locked in a false-bottomed document case she had built out of cardboard and a good eye for measurement. She had built the false bottom on the second day, which now felt like the smartest thing she had ever done. She worked in the afternoons, when Charles was out, when the sun came through her window and lit up the paper. By day 12, she had a complete map of the fraud. By day 13, she had cross-referenced it against Holly's log for every payroll discrepancy. By day 14, she was ready for Gerald Pratt. She went to him. He was in the corner room of the main house where he did his correspondence work. A quiet man, 40-ish, spectacles. The kind of man you forgot was in the room the moment he stopped speaking. Mr. Pratt, may I have a word? He looked up. His face changed. He knew. She saw it in one moment. A man who had been waiting to be caught, who had been waiting so long, the waiting had eaten him. Winifred closed the door behind her. She sat down across from him. Mr. Pratt, she said, I need to ask you about 11 vendor contracts, signed with the name Denton Cole, over the past 3 years. Gerald Pratt's hands began to shake. He looked at his desk. He said, I did not know. I know you did not. I did not know. Winifred waited. He looked up at her. His eyes were wet. Charles told me. He said the vendor renewal signatory was unavailable and we needed the paperwork filed before the end of the month. He said to sign the name printed above the line. I did. I did not think. How many times? 11 over 3 years. He knew you would not ask, yes. Mr. Pratt. Winifred kept her voice steady. Would you be willing to write a statement, in your own words, describing exactly what Charles told you to do, and when, and how many times? He looked at her. His mouth worked. If I do, what happens to me? If you cooperate fully and your account is accurate, You are a witness, not a defendant. But Charles will not be in a position to hurt you if we do this properly." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I have been afraid for 2 years, I know. I have wanted to tell someone, I know." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I will write it," he said. "Tonight. I will slide it under your door. Thank you." She stood. "Miss Harper," he said. She turned back. "I did not know. She died," he said. "Miss Vance. I only heard she went to Oregon. I did not know." "We do not know she's dead yet," Winifred said, but she thought. "Except we do, except Holly knows, except I know, except I am going to prove it." Gerald Pratt looked at his hands. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Of course." She left. That night at 11:04, handwritten pages slid under her door. She locked them in the document case. The next morning, Winifred rode to town with Holt. She told Charles she needed to verify a supplier delivery discrepancy, which was true. She had scheduled it 3 days ago. It was a routine errand, but once in town she had 2 other stops to make. The first was the telegraph office. She sent a wire in Wesley's name, requesting the Wyoming Business Registry records for Meridian land and cattle. A contact of Wesley's lawyer in Cheyenne would return the answer within a week. She had already discussed this with Wesley. The wire went out under his account. No one would question it. The second stop was the town cemetery. She did not tell Holt where she was going. She walked the 6 blocks alone. She entered through the wrought iron gate. She asked the caretaker. "Vance," she said. "Cordelia Vance." She would have been buried within the last year. The caretaker was an old man, sun-weathered. He looked at her, then at his book. "Vance," he said. "Yes. February of this year. Plot 17, Section C, just past the willow." Winifred walked to the willow. She found the plot. The stone was small, modest, a single line of engraving. Cordelia Vance, 1849 to 1884, at rest. No family names, no inscription. No one had paid for anything more. Winifred stood there for a long time. She had brought no flowers. She had not planned this stop. She had only known she would need to make it. She knelt. She picked up a small stone from the grass beside the plot and placed it on top of the marker. It was a thing her mother had done when someone was buried far from home. A little stone to say, "Someone came." She stayed a moment. Then she said quietly, "I did not know you, Cordelia, but I know what happened to you, and I want you to know. I am going to finish what you started." She stood up. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand once. Then she squared her shoulders. She walked back to the wagon. Holt was waiting. He looked at her face. He did not ask. He drove her home. The next day, Charles brought the altered ledger pages to her office. He came in without knocking. He set the pages on her desk. "Miss Harper," he said, "there are discrepancies I need to discuss." Winifred looked down. She recognized them. They were the ledger pages she had been working from, except several of the figures had been changed, not subtly, noticeably, in a hand that mimicked hers, not perfectly, but well enough that if a lawyer compared them to the originals in her case, it would look like she had made errors, or worse, alterations. She understood immediately. He was framing her. He was preparing the story he intended to use if he needed it. Accountant made errors. Accountant panicked. Accountant tried to blame her employer to deflect from her own mistakes. Elegant, in the way all his frauds had been elegant. She looked up at him. She did not blink. "These are not my figures," she said. "They are your pages from your ledger. They have been altered." "That is a serious accusation, Miss Harper." "Yes, it is." He watched her. "Miss Harper," he said. He sat down, uninvited. "I think what we have here is a situation where a new employee, still learning the operation, has made significant errors in her record keeping. And perhaps under the pressure of that realization, has become confused about the source of those errors." He smiled kindly. "It happens. I have seen it before. There is no shame in it. But we need to correct it before anyone else sees these pages." Winifred said nothing. He continued, "I think it would be best if we agreed that you would step back from the account work temporarily while I review what has been filed for your own protection, so that no one can suggest you continued to handle records after discrepancies were noted. Translation: stop working, stop talking, or I will make you the person who altered these documents." She stood up, slowly. He was taller than her. It did not matter. "Mr. Ashcroft," she said. Her voice was completely level. "I appreciate your concern. I will review the pages you have shown me and have a response for you tomorrow morning." He had not expected that. He had expected surrender or panic. She had given him neither. "I think we should resolve this tonight," he said. "Tomorrow morning," she said. "I am certain by then we will have a clearer picture." They looked at each other across her desk for a very long moment. Then he picked up the pages. "Very well," he said. "Tomorrow morning." He left. Winifred sat down. She did not move for a full minute. Then she stood up. She took the complete summary out of the document case. Every page. She took Gerald Pratt's 4-page statement. She took the letter to father. She took the copies of the 11 forged contracts. She took the notes on the land transfers. She divided it all into 2 identical sets. One set went back into the document case. The other set she wrapped in a piece of oilcloth she had bought in town the day before, along with a small folding spade, along with a lantern with a shutter, because a woman who was about to do something desperate had better have supplies ready. She waited until dark. She went to the creek. She dug a hole at the base of the largest cottonwood on the bank, 18 inches down. She placed the oilcloth package in the hole. She covered it. She smoothed the dirt. She placed 3 flat stones on top of the spot in a small line. Casual. If you did not know what you were looking for, you would not see it. She stood. She dusted her hands off. She walked back to the main house. Wesley was sitting on the equipment shed steps. He had seen her go. He had seen her come back. He did not ask. "He came to my office tonight," she said. "He's making his move." Wesley stood. "My lawyer arrives tomorrow morning," he said. "I need him here by 7, Wesley said. "He will be. I sent word 4 days ago." She looked at him. 4 days ago. "Yes. You were already preparing. I was already worried." She held his eyes. "Wesley," she said, "if tomorrow does not go the way we hope, there is a package at the base of the tallest cottonwood on the creek bank, 18 inches down, under 3 stones in a row." He nodded once, slowly. "I will remember," he said. She started to walk past him. He caught her hand, very lightly. "Winnie," he said, "are you all right?" She almost laughed. "Ask me again tomorrow afternoon." "I will," he said. She went inside. She went to the kitchen. The lamp was still on. Holly was still up. Beatrice was asleep in the back room. Her breathing was clear now. 2 days out from the fever. She had already twice in the last morning called Winifred Mama, and Winifred had not corrected her. Winifred sat down at the table. Holly looked at her. Now Holly said, "Now, then we get through it." "Yes." Holly reached across the table, took her hand. "Winifred, look at me." Winifred looked. "You are not going to be alone in that room tomorrow," Holly said. "I will be in that room. Wesley will be in that room. Ambrose, Thaddeus, Gerald Pratt, the sheriff, the circuit judge's clerk, the lawyer. That is 8 people between you and Charles Ashcroft. And behind all of us, behind every single one of us, is a small girl asleep in the pantry who called you Mama last night. Do you know what that means?" Winifred could not speak. "It means," Holly said, "you are not the widow with $14 anymore." Winifred's eyes filled. She did not let them spill. "Not yet," she said. "I'm so tired." "I know, honey. I have been tired for 6 years. I know. I did not know how tired. I know." Holly stood up, walked around the table, pulled Winifred against her, held her. The kind of hold a mother gives. The kind Winifred's own mother had given her once, at 14 when a boy had broken her heart, and again at 17 when her father had died, and again at 23 when the baby had died, and never after that because her mother had died too, at 51 of a fever no one could name. Winifred cried finally, into an old woman's shoulder in a warm kitchen with a lamp burning and a small girl breathing steadily in the next room. She cried for Thomas. She cried for the baby. She cried for Cordelia. She cried for all the years she had done this alone. She cried until she was empty, which took a long time. Then Holly sat her down, poured her tea, watched her drink it. Now Holly said, "To bed. You have work at 7. Winifred stood up. She looked at Holly. She said, "Thank you." Holly said, "Go." Winifred went upstairs. She lay down. She did not sleep at first. She thought about the meeting room, about the papers laid out, about Charles walking in, expecting to be the most powerful man in the room, and discovering he was wrong. She thought about a small girl asleep in a pantry room. She thought about Cordelia in plot 17, section C. She thought about a letter that had not been signed yet, in the 3rd drawer of the equipment shed, waiting to travel to a father who had been reading his son's reports for years. She thought about Wesley on the equipment shed steps. She thought about her hand in his hand. She slept. At 3 in the morning, she woke suddenly. Something was wrong. She sat up. She listened. The house was quiet. Then, very faint, she heard footsteps in the yard. Not the steady tread of a man walking to the barn to check on a horse. Quick, light, the tread of someone trying not to be heard. She got out of bed. She went to her window. She saw a figure crossing the yard, small, bent low, toward the kitchen door. Winifred's blood went to ice. She ran, downstairs, into the kitchen, through the pantry, the little room off the back. Empty. The bed was empty. The blanket was thrown back. Fern was on the floor. Beatrice was gone. Winifred stood in the doorway, not breathing. Then she saw it, on the pillow, a note folded, once. She unfolded it. The handwriting was Charles Ashcroft's. It said, "Miss Harper, there has been a small development. The child in your care has been taken to another location. She is safe, for now. If you wish to see her returned unharmed, bring every document you have concerning ranch business to my office at 8:30 in the morning, alone. If any other person is present, or if you have made copies, or if you speak of this note to anyone, the child will be placed on the eastbound train to the Denver orphanage at first light." You have 5 hours to make your decision. Winifred stood in the pantry, the note in her hand, the doll on the floor, the empty bed. She could not breathe. She could not think. Then, very slowly, she looked up and she said, out loud, to no one, very quiet, almost a whisper, "No." Then louder, "No." She turned. She walked. She went to find Wesley. Winifred crossed the yard in her nightgown and boots. She did not stop for a coat. She did not stop for anything. The bunkhouse was dark. She did not knock. She pulled the door open. 20 men asleep. She did not care. Wesley. Her voice was not loud, but every man in that room sat up. Because it was a woman's voice at 3 in the morning, and a woman's voice at 3 in the morning meant something was wrong. Wesley was on his feet before she finished his name. He crossed to her in his shirt sleeves, barefoot. She handed him the note. He read it. His face did not change, which was somehow worse. "Ambrose," he said. "Get up, Thaddeus. Get up. Callum, get up." 3 men were already pulling on boots. Wesley looked at Winifred. "Not here," he said. "The kitchen." She turned and ran. 2 minutes later, she was back in Holly's kitchen. The lamp lit. Holly already there, in her nightgown, her silver hair loose down her back. She had heard the running. Winifred handed her the note. Holly read it once. She closed her eyes. She opened them. She said one word. "Charles, yes." Holly sat down, hard, in the chair. Then she stood right back up. "No," she said. "No. We do not sit. We move." Wesley came in, Ambrose and Thaddeus behind him, an older man behind them, 58, weathered, Scottish accent when he spoke. Callum McBride. Winifred had seen him around the yard, had not spoken to him, but every man on the ranch tipped his hat to Callum McBride. Callum did not ask what was happening. Wesley told him in 5 sentences. Callum nodded, then said, "I know every abandoned homestead within 20 miles. I know which ones have wagons still parked. I know which ones a man could hide a child in without being seen. Give me an hour. Take Ambrose," Wesley said. Ambrose was already at the door. "Take a lantern." Callum was already gone. Wesley turned to Thaddeus. "Ride for Marcus Hale. He arrives tomorrow," Thaddeus said. "Ride for him now. Meet him at the crossroads. He will have taken the late train. He is at the Miles City station by now. Bring him here before dawn." Thaddeus was gone. Wesley turned to Winifred. She was standing in the middle of the kitchen in her nightgown with her arms wrapped around herself. He crossed to her. He took her by the shoulders. "Winnie, look at me." She looked. "Charles thinks he has you cornered," Wesley said, "because he thinks you love that little girl more than you love the truth. And he's right about one thing. You do love her. But he's wrong about the other. He does not know what a woman like you does when she is cornered. What does she do? She fights back harder." Winifred's eyes filled. "I cannot lose her, Wesley. You will not. You do not know that. I know Callum. I know Ambrose. I know Charles. He does not have the men. He does not have the network. He is desperate and he has taken a child from a kitchen, and he does not know how many people have loved this ranch for how long. He is going to lose. He just does not know it yet." She could not answer. She just nodded. He held her a moment longer. Then he stepped back. "Wesley," she said. "Yes. If I lose her, you will not. If I lose her, Winnie, stop. He held her eyes. If we lose her tonight, he said, I will spend the rest of my life helping you find her. That is my promise. Do you hear me? You will not carry that alone. You will not carry anything alone ever again. She nodded. He went out. Holly set a kettle on the stove because Holly was a woman who had lived through 3 wars and 18 winters and had learned that in a crisis, you put the kettle on. You did not sit in the dark. You made tea. You gave the people around you something warm to hold. Because when the world was breaking, sometimes the only thing you could offer somebody was a cup of tea, and the certainty that someone was still standing at the stove. Winifred sat down. Holly sat down across from her. They did not speak for a long time. Then Holly said, "Tell me about your boy." Winifred looked up. Now. Yes. Now. Why now? Because you need to talk, and because I have been waiting to ask. Winifred was quiet for a moment. Then she began. His name was Thomas Jr. He was born on the 12th of October, in the small hours. It was cold. Thomas held him first. Because I was too tired to hold him, he wrapped him in a blanket my mother had made me, and he stood by the fire, and he cried. He said, "Winnie, look what we made." Holly was still. He was a beautiful boy, Winifred said. He had my mouth, he had Thomas's eyes. He was small, very small. The midwife said sometimes they come small and grow. She was not worried. She was cheerful. She left in the morning. She looked at her hands. By the 3rd day, he was not eating. By the 5th day, he was not opening his eyes. The doctor came. He said it happened sometimes. He said we should hold him and love him. And so we did. Thomas and I, we took turns, we did not sleep. He died in Thomas's arms on a Wednesday morning, just before dawn. Thomas held him for 2 hours after. He would not put him down. He would not let me hold him again. Holly waited. I did not know. Then Winifred said that Thomas would die with him. Not that morning, but he did. It just took him 4 years to finish it. And when the bank called the loan and everything fell apart, Thomas did not have anything left. He had already given everything he had to a 9-day-old boy in October. Silence. Then Holly said, "Your husband loved that child. Yes, he loved you. Yes, and you loved him, yes. But you were the one who kept going." Winifred looked at her. I did not have a choice. Yes, Holly said, you did. You could have stopped. You could have stopped 100 times. You did not. You kept going. And that is the woman who is sitting in my kitchen right now. That is the woman Charles Ashcroft has just made his last mistake against. Winifred wiped her face. I am so tired of losing people, Holly. I know. I cannot lose her too. You will not. You do not know. Holly stood. She came around the table. She sat down beside Winifred. Not across. Beside. She took Winifred's hand. Honey, she said, I am 62 years old. I have buried a husband and 2 sisters and more children of neighbors than I can count on both hands. And I want to tell you something I know. Do you know how I know it? Do you know why? Because I have lived through mornings I did not think I would live through. And I have watched other women live through them too. And I have watched them come out the other side. Not the same. Never the same. But standing. And what I know is this. You are not going to lose that girl tonight. Because that girl is not just yours. She is ours, all of us. And when a whole ranch decides a child belongs to it, No one takes her without going through every one of us first. Winifred squeezed Holly's hand very hard. The kettle sang. Holly got up, made the tea. They sat, they drank, they waited. Outside the dark was starting to grey. 2 hours until 8:30. 2 hours until Charles Ashcroft would walk into a meeting room expecting to be the most powerful man there. 2 hours. At 6:10, Marcus Hale arrived. He was a short man, deliberate. He walked into the kitchen with a leather document case and a face that had spent 30 years in rooms where powerful men lied. He did not waste words. "Where is the sheriff?" "He is arriving at 7, Winifred said. Wesley sent word. "The judge's clerk. Also 7. The child. Callum and Ambrose are looking. They have been out for 2 hours. Marcus nodded. He opened his case on the kitchen table. Papers spilled out. He had been reading on the wagon. "Miss Harper," he said, "I need everything you have, now." She handed him the document case. He read. He was fast. When he got to Gerald Pratt's statement, he made a small, satisfied sound. When he got to the letter to father, his eyes narrowed. When he got to the Wyoming registry entry Wesley had received 2 days ago. Meridian land and cattle. Registered October 1879. Sole principal Foster Vance. Charles Ashcroft's brother-in-law. Registered 3 months before Charles was hired at the Red Willow. Marcus set the paper down. He looked at Winifred over his spectacles. "Miss Harper." "Yes. You did all this in 15 days. 16. He shook his head. "You did all this in 16 days. "Yes." He looked back at the papers. Then he said something very quietly. "Extraordinary." He looked up. "Now. The child. What is your best guess where he has her?" "I do not know." Best guess, Winifred thought. She thought back through everything Charles had said in 3 weeks. Every offhand mention, every location, every ride. The Delaney property, she said. Marcus waited. Every Monday morning he rides to the Delaney property, 3 miles west. He is gone for 2 hours. Wesley has watched him do it for 8 months. There is nothing there. It is an abandoned homestead. The Delaney family left 3 years ago. Marcus nodded slowly. "Have you told Callum?" "Not that. He is checking a wider range." "Send word." Winifred was on her feet before he finished. She grabbed a coat off the hook, ran to the door, threw it open, and stopped. Because a wagon was already coming up the lane, fast, 2 figures on the seat. The sun was just cresting the ridge, and in the back of the wagon, sitting up, wrapped in a blanket, was a small girl with a doll pressed against her chest. Winifred did not remember running. She only knew she was at the wagon. She was pulling Beatrice into her arm. The girl was warm, small. She smelled like hay. She was gripping Fern with white knuckles. And she looked at Winifred with wide, dry eyes, and she said, "Mama, I was not scared." Winifred pressed her face into the girl's hair. She did not cry. Not yet. Because there was still a meeting in 2 hours. Because Charles Ashcroft did not know yet. Because the day was not over. She looked up. Callum was on the wagon seat. He looked exhausted. Behind him, in the back of the wagon, getting down slowly, was a man Winifred had never seen before. He was maybe 35, lean, dark hair. He had a 2-day beard and eyes that had cried recently. He looked at Winifred, then he looked at Beatrice, and his face broke, not into tears exactly, into something more complicated. The way a face breaks when a man has waited 2 years to see his own child and does not know yet if she remembers him. Winifred understood before he spoke. "Denton," she said. The man nodded once. "Denton Cole." "Yes, ma'am." Beatrice looked at him. Over Winifred's shoulder, her small face was very serious. "The man Charles Ashcroft brought me to," she said, "was you." "Yes. You said you were a friend of Mama's. I said I was a friend of the ranch. I was sent to keep you safe. Are you?" "I am." Beatrice studied him. Then, very quietly, she said, "Papa." Denton Cole did not move for one full second. Then he came around the wagon. He put both hands over his mouth. He knelt in the dirt. He did not reach for her. He did not ask her to come to him. He just knelt, and he waited. Beatrice looked at Winifred. Winifred set her down, slowly. Beatrice stood on the dirt in her nightgown holding Fern. She looked at Denton. She looked at Winifred. She looked at Denton. Then she walked 3 steps to her father, and she stopped in front of him. And she said, "You went away." "I did." "Why?" "Because a bad man told everyone I did something I did not do, and I had to leave to try to fix it." "Did you fix it?" "Not yet, but I came back to try." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she put her small hand on his cheek. "Papa," she said, "Miss Winnie is my mama now." Denton's face crumpled. "I know, honey. I know. You do not mind." "No, sweetheart. I do not mind. I only want you to be safe and loved. And you are." She wrapped her arms around his neck. He held her. He did not sob. He just held. Winifred stood 5 feet away with her hands over her mouth. Because she was watching a father find his daughter, and a daughter give her father permission to love her without losing her. Because she was watching a family form in a ranch yard at dawn. Because for the first time in 6 years, she was watching something be added to her life instead of taken from it. Callum climbed down from the wagon. He walked over to her. He stood beside her without speaking. Then he said, quietly, in his Scottish rasp, "Delaney Place. Second guess. First was the barn at Miller's Crossing." Winifred wiped her face. "Thank you, Callum." He nodded once. Then he said, softer, "I have known Denton Cole since he was 19. He is a good man. He was framed by Charles Ashcroft 5 years ago. He has been a laborer in Wyoming since, trying to save enough to come back and clear his name. He received Mr. Wesley's letter 4 days ago. He was here yesterday morning. He was looking for work when Charles found him. Charles did not recognize him, because Charles never bothers to remember the men he ruins." Winifred looked at Callum. "Charles hired him to keep an eye on the child. He told him nothing else. And when Denton realized what was happening, he did the only thing he could. He took her before Charles could give the order to move her." Winifred looked at Callum. She did not have words. Callum tipped his hat. Then he walked past her toward the bunkhouse. Because Callum McBride had been up all night, riding through Montana dark, and he needed a coffee, and he was not a man who liked being thanked out loud. At 7:15 the sheriff arrived. At 7:20 the judge's clerk arrived. At 7:30 Wesley walked into the kitchen with Marcus Hale beside him. Beatrice was in the pantry room, asleep. Denton was sitting on the edge of the bed watching her breathe. He had not moved. Winifred came out of the pantry, closed the door softly. She looked at Wesley. She said, "I am ready." He looked at her. "I know you are." She was still in her nightgown and boots. She turned, went upstairs, changed, came back down in her best dress, which was not very fine. It was the one her mother had made her the year she got married. It was blue. It still fit. She had brushed it that morning without knowing why. She walked into the meeting room at 8:15. Marcus Hale was there, the sheriff. Deputy behind him. Arthur Beam, the young judge's clerk with 3 sharpened pencils. Gerald Pratt. Against the wall. Very pale but present. Wesley. Near the window. In a clean shirt. Boots polished. Holly. Standing beside Winifred's chair. Silver hair pinned up. Apron off. Winifred sat. She put her document case on the table. She folded her hands. At 8:30 exactly, Charles Ashcroft opened the door. He saw the room. He stopped, not for long, but long enough that his body understood something before his mind caught up. Then the mask slid back into place. "Good morning," he said, smiling. "I did not realize there would be a meeting this morning." Marcus Hale spoke, pleasantly. "Please sit down, Mr. Ashcroft." Charles did not move immediately. He looked at the sheriff. He looked at Hale. He looked at Wesley. His eyes met Wesley's eyes. And something happened to his face. Small, almost invisible. Recognition. And beneath recognition. The first fear Charles Ashcroft had felt in 4 years. He looked at Winifred. She looked back. She did not smile. She did not speak. She just looked. The way she had looked at the banker across her husband's grave. Charles sat. "Miss Harper," he said, "where is the child?" "She is safe," Winifred said. "I do not think you understand what I said in my note." I understood every word. He blinked. She continued, "The child is safe. Her father has her. Her father, whose name is Denton Cole, whom you framed 5 years ago, whom you hired yesterday without recognizing, whom you paid to hold his own daughter as leverage against me. He took her because he is a better man than you are. And she is now upstairs in a warm room with a doll her father made her. And you are here, and there is no leverage left." Charles stared at her. His hands were on the table. He curled them into fists slowly. Marcus Hale spoke. "Mr. Ashcroft, my name is Marcus Hale. I represent Mr. Wesley Alden Carter, the owner of Red Willow Ranch, whom, as you may have gathered, has been present on this property for the past 3 years in a capacity that did not fully represent his position." Charles looked at Wesley. "You." "Me," Wesley said. Silence, then. Charles laughed. Short, sharp, ugly. "You have been playing hired hand for 3 years. I have been listening for 3 years. You have got to be joking. I have never been more serious in my life." Charles looked around the room. He saw the sheriff, the clerk with his pencils, Hale opening a leather portfolio, Gerald Pratt looking at the floor, Holly with her arms crossed like she was waiting for a bad pie to come out of the oven, Winifred with her hands folded on a document case. He said, very quietly, "You will not prove anything. We already have," Winifred said. She opened the case. She laid it out. Every piece. The fraudulent invoices. The payroll records. The forged land transfers. The county recorder confirmation. The Wyoming registry showing Foster Vance as sole principal of Meridian Land and Cattle, registered 3 months before Charles was hired at Red Willow. Gerald Pratt's 4-page signed statement. The handwriting comparison to the wagon maintenance logs proving Pratt wrote the fake signatures. And the letter. She laid the letter last. The letter to father. She turned it around so Charles could read it right side up. She said, "Your father knew Charles." He did not respond. She said, "Your father has been reading your reports for years." He looked at the letter. He did not touch it. His face was very still. Then he did something she did not expect. He laughed again. Short. Bitter. You want to bring my father into this? Yes. Fine, he said. Bring him. He will destroy every one of you. The door opened. Everyone in the room turned. Elias Ashcroft stood in the doorway. He was 67 years old, silver hair, a dark coat, the kind of coat a man wore to funerals. His hands were shaking slightly, but his eyes were clear. Charles stared at his father. Elias walked into the room. He did not look at Charles. He walked to the table. He set down a bundle of leather-bound journals, 6 of them, tied with a black ribbon. He looked at Marcus Hale. Mr. Hale, he said. His voice was tired, very old. Commissioner Ashcroft. I am no longer the commissioner. As of 1 hour ago, I have submitted my resignation. Marcus Hale nodded slowly. Elias turned toward Winifred. Miss Harper, he said. She stood. She did not know why. Something in his voice. Yes, sir. Elias looked at her for a long moment. His mouth worked, then he said, My wife wrote in a journal every night for 32 years. 6 volumes. She left them to me when she died. I did not open them for 8 years. I could not. Last night, my son sent me a note asking for my help with something he called a small development. I could not sleep. I went into the study. I opened the first journal. Anna wrote about our son. She wrote about him from the time he was 13 years old. She wrote about things he did, things she confronted him about, things I refused to hear when she tried to tell me, because he was our only child, because I could not bear to know. His voice caught. He did not cry, but something behind his eyes went thin and old. He turned toward Charles. He looked at his son directly for the first time since entering the room. Charles was completely still. I have failed twice, Elias said. I failed Anna when she tried to tell me who you were becoming, and I failed Miss Cordelia Vance when I received a letter from her 3 months before she died. She wrote to me. She wrote to warn me about what you were doing, and I did not answer that letter because I could not bear to know. And now she is dead, and a bookkeeper widow has done in 16 days what I refused to do in 20 years, and I will not fail a 3rd time. He turned to Marcus Hale. The journals are yours. Every entry, every date, every account of what my son has been. My statement is inside the top journal. Written last night, signed, witnessed by my housekeeper. Marcus Hale received the journals, set them on the table. Charles stood up. You cannot do this to me. You have done it to yourself, his father said, quietly. Father, you are not my son this morning. You are a man who took a 5-year-old girl from her bed to force a widow into silence. You are not my son. Charles looked around the room. He looked for an ally. There was none. He looked at Wesley. Wesley was looking at him with the particular calm patience of a man who had waited 3 years for exactly this. He looked at Winifred. Winifred stood slowly. Mr. Ashcroft, she said, there is one more thing. He waited. I want you to know, she said, why I did not stop when you threatened me. Why I did not step back from the accounts when you gave me the altered ledger pages. Why I have been able to look you in the eye for 3 weeks. He did not speak. 4 years ago, she said, my husband borrowed money from the Territorial Cattle Bank of Billings to expand our operation. The bank called that loan early, 6 months before the contract permitted. It broke him. He died the spring after. I have kept every piece of paperwork from that transaction because numbers do not lie. She reached into the document case. She took out one final envelope. She laid it on the table. 2 years ago, she said, I finally read the fine print on the loan document. I noticed that the loan officer who called our loan early was listed as an assistant vice president of the bank. I did not recognize the name at the time because I had never met him. She looked at Charles. She said, "I recognized the name 3 weeks ago, on my second day at Red Willow Ranch, when you introduced yourself." Charles went white. "You worked at the Territorial Cattle Bank of Billings for 8 months in 1879. Then you left to take a position as ranch manager because you had come recommended by a Wyoming land company that did not exist yet in any county Thomas or I had ever heard of." She paused. She held his eye. "You called my husband's loan," she said. "You broke him. Then you came here to steal from other people. And I did not know that when I applied for this job. I did not know when I met you. I did not know when I found the first fake invoice. I only knew when I saw your signature on a copy of Thomas's original loan papers 3 nights ago. Because I had been carrying them in the bottom of my mother's suitcase for 4 years." She let that sit. Then she said, "I am not just here for the ranch, Mr. Ashcroft. I am here for Thomas. I am here for Cordelia. I am here for Denton. I am here for the 14 men whose wages you stole. I am here for a small girl who lost her father to your convenience, and for the bookkeeper who came before me, who did not get to sit in this chair." She sat down. Charles Ashcroft looked at her for a long time. His face did something no one had ever seen it do before. It emptied out. The sheriff stepped forward. Charles did not resist. He walked out of the room between the sheriff and the deputy. He did not look back. The door closed. The room was quiet. Elias Ashcroft was standing in the middle of the room like a man who did not know where his body ended. Winifred stood up. She walked around the table. She stopped in front of him. "Sir," she said. He looked at her. His eyes were very old. "I'm sorry," he said. "I am. It is not enough. I know it is not. But I am. For your husband, for Miss Vance, for all of them. I am." Winifred looked at him. She thought. She thought about how easy it would be to say nothing, to let him carry it, to watch him walk out into whatever was left of his life. Instead, she said, "Read the journals, sir, all of them, every night. Do not stop until you have read the last page. That is what your wife asked you to do. Do that." He nodded. He could not speak. She said, "And write to Cordelia Vance's family, wherever they are. Tell them what happened to her. Pay for a real headstone, her name in full, her dates in full, and add 3 words to the bottom." He waited. She was believed, Winifred said. Elias closed his eyes. He nodded once. He walked out. 6 months later, the northern parcel cabin stood at the top of a slow rise overlooking a bend in the creek. Wesley's father had built it in the summer of 1861 with his own hands. It had been empty for 12 years. Wesley had not been back to it in 8. Winifred stood in the doorway on a cold afternoon in February. She was in her coat. She had a broom, because a woman who was about to make a house into a home started by sweeping. Wesley came up behind her, set a stack of firewood on the porch. He looked at her. "You do not have to move up here yet," he said. "It is cold. We have all winter. I want to see it first." He nodded. She walked in. The cabin was small, 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, a cast iron stove, a window that looked west. Winifred stood at the window. She said, "Your father built this, he did. Alone, mostly. His brother came out from Ohio for 2 months." She looked at the mountains. They were white with snow. They were enormous. They were unhurried. "Wesley," she said. "Yes, you have not asked me yet." "Asked you what? You know what?" He was quiet. Then he said, "I have been waiting for the right time. There is no right time. There is only now." He came to stand beside her at the window. He said, "Winnie, yes. Will you marry me? Will you stand on this land as my wife and build a life here with me and Beatrice and Holly and Denton and whoever else we gather? Will you?" She did not answer right away. She looked at the mountains. She thought about Thomas. She thought about a boy who had lived 9 days. She thought about her mother's suitcase. She thought about $14 folded in a leather pouch. She thought about a woman named Cordelia Vance, whose grave now had 3 words at the bottom, because a man had finally kept a promise made in a bedroom 8 years before. She thought about Beatrice's small hand on Denton's cheek. She thought about Holly's kitchen. She thought about a fence post and 3 feet of digging. She thought. Then she turned to Wesley. She looked at him. She said, "Yes." He closed his eyes. Then he opened them. He said, "I have been trying not to hope for that answer for 4 months. I know. Winnie. Yes. I love you." She smiled. "I know that too." He put his arms around her. He held her, very quietly, very still, the way a man held a woman when he understood that what he was holding was something he had waited his whole life to hold and did not intend to be careless with. The reconciliation took another 2 months. Every worker paid. Every dollar. Wesley stood in the yard on the last day of March in front of 14 men and their families. He read the names out loud. He handed each envelope over personally. He said the same words to everyone. "I am sorry. I should have found this sooner. Thank you for staying. Thank you for the work." Calloway, the oldest hand after Callum, took his envelope and stood a moment, then said, "Then we are square." Wesley nodded. "Then we are square," he said. That was enough. That was Winifred understood, watching from the porch of the main house, with Beatrice on her hip, the entire measure of it. Not forgiveness, not fixed, just square, which was in a working country with working people most of what could ever be honestly asked for. Denton became foreman. Ambrose worked the East Range. Thaddeus stayed on with the animals and the small barn and had begun teaching a young hand named Jedediah everything their mother had taught him. Holly stayed in her kitchen. Beatrice stayed with them. She would grow up on that land. She would learn to ride. She would learn to keep books at Winifred's elbow. She would learn poultices at Thaddeus's. She would learn to cook bread beside Holly for the rest of Holly's long, long life. She would call Winifred Mama. She would call Denton Papa. She would spend Sundays with both, and the ranch would be honest. Every ledger, every entry, every payroll record, cross-referenced 3 ways, because the woman who kept the books had always done it that way, and no one who worked there ever suggested doing it differently. Because some things, once you had them done right, you did not settle for less. On a warm evening in June, Winifred sat on the porch of the main house. Wesley was inside, going over a supply order. She could hear his pencil on paper. Holly sat beside her in a rocker, silver hair loose in the evening breeze. Beatrice was on the porch steps pulling the ears of an old ranch dog who tolerated her because she smelled like Holly's biscuits. Winifred looked out over the ranch. Holly said, very quietly, "Are you happy, honey?" Winifred did not answer right away. She was thinking about Thomas. She was thinking about her boy. She was thinking about a widow with $14. Then she said, "I did not know I could still be. But you are. I am." Holly reached across, took her hand, held it. They sat. The sun went down. The mountains went pink and then blue and then black. Beatrice climbed into Winifred's lap, fell asleep with her doll pressed to her chest. Winifred sat with a warm child in her arms and an old woman's hand in her hand, and a man she loved working quietly inside her house. She thought. She thought about a promise she had made at a graveside 4 years ago. She thought about how she had kept it. Not the way she had expected, not the way she had planned, but she had kept it. She was not the woman who had arrived at Red Willow Ranch with $14 and a borrowed suitcase. She was not the woman who had sat beside her husband's grave and made a promise no one heard. She was not exactly the woman she had been at all. She was someone else now. Someone she had built with help. Without help. Both. She was Winifred Harper. Bookkeeper. Wife, mother. Loved. The stars came out, one at a time. Enormous. Unhurried. The way they came out over Montana on the nights when everything was finally at rest. Winifred closed her eyes. She let herself for the first time in her whole life be exactly where she was. And she was home.